Hello, we are live, I hope. Evening, everybody. How are we? Let's give a few moments for the stream to kind of come to life and figure out what it's doing, because it's not. There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the launch party for Sidequest. I am super pumped for this. I am really excited to share Sidequest with you all and for you to all get your hands on it. If you're watching this video from the future and not live, then Sidequest is out like right now. You can find a link to it down in the description underneath this video, and yeah, go grab it, read it, enjoy it. I'm going to get everything going and ready here. I need to figure out why I can't see the chat box. I can see it. I can see my version, but I don't know whether you can see all of the versions that should be on the screen. While I go ahead and figure that out, this evening is going to be a general kind of hangout, chat, Q&A. You can ask all your questions about the magazine. We might do a little bit of collaborative world building if there's some time. And I'm also going to be giving away some copies of Sidequest. So I will tell you how we're going to do that in a little bit once everything is all sorted. There we go. The chat has appeared on screen. Weird. I get weird delay. I see it on my screen and then I see it in the chat and then I see it on YouTube. Let's go ahead and get everything ready. So let's start off with kind of a little context for Sidequest and what it is. So for a while, I've been producing content for my Patreon. Every month I produce PDF content and digital stuff over on Patreon. You are hella blurry. Anyone else seeing hella blurry? Let me grab a version of it on my end and I'll see if I'm blurry for myself. I've got to do it on my phone for it to work. Which would be all well and good if it worked on my phone. It could just be a connection issue on your end. If other people are seeing me clearly, that's fine. If we have some technical issues, that's no bother. So yeah, context on Sidequest. For a while now, I've been producing digital PDF content for my patrons. Every month I'd make kind of maps and one-page adventures and little game aids and kind of disparate things. And it was becoming really difficult to kind of advertise all of that stuff in videos and elsewhere to say, hey, I've got a Patreon, you can support me, you get this massive list of stuff every month. You're going to get a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It was really difficult to kind of give people an idea of what they were going to get. And last month now, I had the idea to bundle it all together in a magazine. And as soon as the idea came to me, I was like, that's perfect. That's the perfect delivery vehicle for all of this content. And I immediately started working, thinking about what I would want to go in the magazine and how I would want to put it together. And Sidequest was born very quickly from that. And then a lot of the content for issue 1 came very quickly after that. So issue 1 has got 4 main pieces of content in it. There is the Ashk Gazetteer, which is going to be an ongoing series that talks about my homebrew world of Ashk that I've been making in videos for the How to Make a Homebrew campaign series for the last couple of years now. A lot of people over the years and through those videos and my campaign diaries have asked for more information about that world and wanted to see PDFs and things like that about the setting. So Sidequest seems like the perfect vehicle to kind of give people that. So in every issue, or probably every issue, you're going to get the Ashk Gazetteer, which will tell you a little bit of information about the world. So in this first issue, it's kind of a high-level overall look at the campaign setting, gives you a bit of a breakdown of the city-states, of some of the culture of Ashk, gives you the map, and includes a link to download a nice high-quality copy of the map so that you can kind of pour over it, get inspiration, or potentially even run your own games in that campaign setting down the line once there's some more Gazetteers out. Future issues are going to cover things like the Pantheon, dive into specifics for the different city-states, cover the factions, all that kind of good stuff for the campaign setting. Then the next article that's going to be in issue 1 is a complete rebuild of the Ranger class, and it's called the Ranger of the Wild. I've always had a problem with the Ranger as it's presented in 5th edition. It feels like a weird halfway house between Marshall and Caster. It's got a little bit of magic, but the magic it gets isn't super interesting, and most Rangers end up defaulting to just Hunter's Mark anyway. So I wanted to remake the Ranger from the ground up, taking the idea of your kind of Aragorns, your Geralt of Rivia, your Men of the Night's Watch, these not necessarily super magical beings, these more mundane characters, these typically human, but it doesn't need to be human, but these people who live at the edges of civilization, protecting civilization from kind of the encroaching wild and those exterior threats. And I wanted to take that and expand it into a full class that doesn't have access to spells, but gets access to a whole bunch of other abilities that kind of tie into that. Yeah, exactly. They're like the Wild Knights. The third article that you're going to get in there is a kind of DM advice article talking about how you can use an almost mid-campaign session 0 to keep your campaign from dying a death, essentially. A lot of campaigns kind of peter out in the middle, and there's some relatively common recurring reasons for that, and that article is going to talk about the method I use to keep my campaign from dying that same death. And then the last thing you're going to get in issue 1 is a brand new monster called the Sleeper of Uqorah. It is a CR11 aberration, lives out in the Astral Sea, and it is super cool. The art is really nice, and there's going to be a video coming out next week talking about the process I use to make homebrew monsters using the Sleeper of Uqorah as an example. And then in Sidequest you're going to get all the lore and all of the mechanics and stat block for that monster. So I'm going to go ahead here and have a look in chat and see what we've got. Trev Firth says, the Ashk videos inspired me to make my own version of early settlement Canada. That is really cool. I'm really glad that they inspired you. We are gonna, let's have a dive through, and as I often do in live streams, I'll take you on a tour of my Legend Keeper setup, because people always appreciate seeing that, and everyone always enjoys seeing how I set that up. So let me go ahead here and change that. There we go. So you can see here we're in my Legend Keeper setup. You can see the Ashk Atlas. This is the setting that I've been playing in now for over a year, and was 40 something sessions in, I think 45, 46 sessions in, and this was the majority of this was built out in those how to play a campaign videos, how to play a campaign, how to plan a homebrew campaign videos, and then the live streams that we did at the tail end of last year. So if I jump over here to the map, I'm just going to make sure that my camera is still in focus, because when I'm looking at the map I can't see myself, so I have to see myself in the camera. So you can see this is in Legend Keeper, which is my preferred world building tool of choice, and it's got a whole bunch of great features that I really love, including the ability to drop pins down on the Atlas, and I keep kind of track of where everything is in my world. You can see that some of the pins are kind of fully opaque and some of them are transparent. The transparent ones are secret pins, that's the word, secret pins that my players can't see. So my players have access to all this, they can see what I've revealed to them, So all of the fully opaque places, they can see those pins, they can see the articles attached to them. Everything that is transparent is a secret, and they can't see that. So when all they'll see is the map with their version on. Bob says, sounds like a hunter I need for my game. A hunter from a city where the magic is banned, who caught mages using no magic, which enabled them to make the ban on magic. I think the Ranger of the Wild would be a good magic hunter. They've got a lot of hunting-based abilities, as a ranger should, and they've got a lot of features at higher levels, especially that really promote kind of teamwork with them, because one of the things that I've always found to be a problem with the ranger is that they're kind of a lone wolf, which fits them thematically, but not so much at the table, because you just get a ranger who does huge amounts of damage all on their own, and they kind of do the same thing every turn. So this Ranger of the Wild rebuild gives the ranger a whole bunch of stuff that allows them to impart bonuses to their allies or interact with their allies in ways that mean that you have to be a bit more of a team player. Rob says, congrats on the launch. Thank you very much. What are your desires for Sidequest? Is it a limited series you've planned, or is it something you could see yourself running indefinitely? So initially, it's going to be 3 issues as a test. So we're going to run May, June, and July. Issue 2 is already in production. We're up to about 8, 9, 10 pages, somewhere around that region. So I'm going to be doing these first 3 issues as a test to see if it's successful, to see if people like it, to see how it's received, and to see what the process is. And if it is well received, then I will keep doing it indefinitely. Once those first 3 issues are out of the way, my goal is to be able to start hiring other writers to take on some of the work. Not necessarily all of it straight away. It depends on how it performs, but I do want other writers involved so that I'm not the only person doing it, both because that would lead to burnout eventually, and because there's a lot of voices that I would really like to give a platform to, and there's a lot of people that I want to throw money at to make cool stuff. So provided the first 3 issues are successful, it will just keep going for as long as it makes sense to do so. Trev asks, can you see yourself selling an annual on either PDF or softcover? Absolutely. A lot of the articles that are going to be included in Sidequest will lend themselves to kind of collections. So the Ashk Gazetteer is a great example of something that it would be really easy to take a year or 18 months worth of articles from the Ashk Gazetteer and bundle that into an Ashk campaign setting. All the content would be there ready to go. I'd probably would either use Patreon or Kickstarter to kind of fund the production cost of it, getting new art and hiring people to do cool new things in it. But there's a bunch of article formats that I have planned that would make for good either annuals or bundle them together for their own separate products. Maya says, if you had a Pathfinder section, I'd happily write some articles. Initially, we're going to go kind of vague fantasy, and when the mechanics come up, it's going to be 5th edition, but that is something that ultimately I want to change. I want it to cover multiple game systems, but that's something that's going to be down the line. So first I want to build up that base of 5th edition and generic fantasy kind of bedrock articles, and then once it kind of grows and reaches a point where I'm hiring a bunch of writers to write all those every month, and then there's still budget left, then it can expand to cover other game systems. So I would love to do some cyberpunk stuff, because I have the Cyberpunk Red book. I've still not had a chance to read through it, even though I've had it since January, I think. And I've still not had a chance to play or run a game of it. But I'd really like to do some sci-fi stuff. There's a lot of kind of sci-fi world building that I'd like to look into and explore in articles. And there's a bunch of other games that I think it would be really cool to focus on once we have that kind of vague fantasy 5th edition bedrock that's nice and stable. A physical campaign book would be awesome for Ashk. I think that's kind of the dream of everyone that makes homebrew campaigns, is one day I can put all of this into a book and it'll be a real thing. Another thing that I would like to do in future issues is tie it to ongoing series on the channel. So I've talked a little bit about this over on Discord and a little bit on YouTube as well. I would like to put together a series looking at how I would run some of the published adventures, probably starting with Descent into Avernus, because in terms of core concept, it's my favorite. It's one of the coolest, going to hell, driving around Mad Max style with all these infernal war machines. I'd love to do a video series where I take that published adventure and talk about what I would specifically do differently with it and how I would change it and how I would run it. And it would be cool to have a kind of companion article series in the magazine to go along with that, for people to be able to get new adventures or kind of written versions of the alternate takes that I would have on the published adventure. That would be really cool as well. I am going to make it so that the chat pops out. That's not the button for it. Let me have a look here. See, I can't remember. It's been so long since we've streamed, I can't actually remember how to do it. Participate, toggle timestamps. Nope, that's not going to work. That's not going to work either. So, that's the wrong page. I can't figure out how to pop out the chat. I can't remember how to do it. So we will periodically come back and forth to the chat and have a look in on it. So for now, let's dive into Legend Keeper and I will show you around. So if we go over here onto the left and click into the wiki, you can see that the page that I usually start my kind of journey in Legend Keeper with is my DM screen. And I really, really like Legend Keeper as a digital DM screen for a couple of reasons. The main one is that when you link to an article, you get an embedded version of that article, which means that I get to keep a huge amount of information in one screen, and I can just hover over the things to get all the information I need. So if I need object, AC, and HP, hover over it, I get it without having to click away. This makes having a digital version of that DM screen where you've got all that information in front of you really easy. Trev asks, will you have Perkins doing an article? I'll have no plan, no problem. I'm sure that Matt would be interested in writing something, and I'm sure that there will be a whole bunch of other YouTubers and folks from the community who you recognize will probably end up writing articles at some point. Like I say, these first 3 issues will be just me, because they are the test, and then once they're over and depending on how successful they are, then we'll look into kind of expanding outwards. So if we go here to Legend Keeper, so something that I haven't shown off in stream a whole bunch before is Legend Keeper's tag system, which is really cool. Let's go ahead and grab some beings for you to see. So we'll grab Captain Bass here. Captain Bass is a hobgoblin soldier that the parties have met. And if you look over on the right hand side of the screen here, you can see the tags NPC, Hobgoblin, and Jabal. And the way the tag system works in Legend Keeper is you've got a filter by tags option. And if I type in Jabal, it will give me every article that has been tagged as Jabal. So you can see that it brings up a whole bunch of stuff. If I want to know which NPCs are specifically from Jabal, I can also filter by NPC, and it will give me a list of all the articles that have been tagged Jabal and NPC. And that's a really handy way to kind of categorize all your information and be able to access it all really quickly. Claire says Matt would bring that good chaotic energy. He absolutely would bring chaos. That chaos energy. That is his whole thing. Cheers, Zip. I am super excited about it. It's going to be real good. Let's see. Let's have a go. Let's switch back over to here. And I've got to move between all of the various windows. Let's turn that off and let's do that. Yeah, let's do that so you can see Sidequest while we're talking about it. I forgot how much just talking incessantly dries out your throat. Ryan says, definitely not on topic, but I absolutely love No Plan, No Problem. It's amazing. Your chemistry is great. Thank you, Ryan. That's very much appreciated. Diogo says, I've never caught the stream before. I've been a DM for 1.5 years now, and I created my own setting and recently started playing on it. All thanks to your awesome videos and tips. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. I'm glad that it's helped. The artwork for the cover for issue 1 is a piece by Dean Spencer, who is a stock artist who produces a huge amount of incredible art, and he's someone I followed for a long time. So once I made the kind of decision to make a magazine, I was like, this is a perfect excuse to go and throw some money at Dean and buy some of his beautiful pieces to use in the magazine. So there's several pieces of art from Dean Spencer and a whole bunch of other stock artists in issue 1. Let's go ahead and figure out. So we'll jump to the Ashk Gazetteer. So as I said, this is going to be an ongoing series of articles talking about the land of Ashk. We need a cover story to go with the cover art, so let me jump back over here. On the cover, Renee Karim wrestles with the dragon Vadazar. I wanted to include something to give some kind of small hook for what is going on in that image. Vadazar is the dragon that I made a video on a couple of years ago now. I did a video where I planned out an entire dungeon on a post-it note and then turned it into an adventure. And the dragon that was involved in that was called Vadazar, so I brought that forward and used that as kind of the little piece of story that was going on in the cover, just to kind of tie back to that. But yeah, we're going to have the Gazetteer, which has got a whole bunch of information on the various parts of Ashk, a bunch of different artwork, stock art from across the internet. There's some really cool pieces in here. And then we go on to the Ranger of the Wild, which is the complete Ranger rework. I'm losing all of my words. And that takes you from level 1 all the way through to level 20, and it includes 3 subclasses. So there's the Shadow Conclave, the Planeswalker Conclave, and the Spirit Conclave. And that takes you... Oh, and the Slayer Conclave. There's 4. There's... Right? Shadow, Planeswalker, Spirit, Slayer. Yeah, there's 4. I completely miscounted. You get 4 subclasses, so you get even more. And then a whole bunch of information on harvesting monsters and using their bits to make concoctions, kind of Witcher style, and then more artwork over there. The Ranger of the Wild is something that I'm really excited to see how people receive this kind of final version of it. I've shown off versions of it several times in the past, and it is usually met with one or two things. Either people that don't like change and are like, I don't want to see any alternate versions of any classes ever, or people that understand what I'm trying to do with the class, which is, I think, very different to how the base class is presented. Oh, I think we're going to give me a break from talking, and I'll tell you about how we're going to do some giveaways. So I would love to give away a couple of copies of Sidequest, the PDF copies of Sidequest, to you folks in chat. And I figure the way we'll do that is if you want to be entered in for a chance to win, just go ahead and type exclamation point giveaway, and then I can use that I can search for that in the comments and use that to pick some winners, and we'll generate some winners. Bob says the hardest thing to do when creating homebrew is keeping it balanced. Yes, there is very much a kind of delicate game to play with balance for homebrew. So the way I always approach it is get as close to kind of official as possible. So look at kind of the existing information for things like feats and features and ability scores, all those kinds of things, and get as close to that as possible. And then you go, right, what do I want to say with this homebrew? What is the feeling that I want to get? What is the vibe that I'm going for? And you go from there and you say, right, okay, I've got this baseline. Now, how can I enhance that using the kind of core concept that I've come up with and make tweaks and changes and introduce new things little by little, always kind of with those two reference points of what is kind of the official kind of baseline for balance, and then what is it that I'm trying to say with this homebrew. Anytime you make something homebrew, you're doing it for a reason. There's a reason that whatever is already published doesn't suit your needs, and it's important to keep that reason in mind, because otherwise you just get into the weeds and you end up making things for their own sake and not to fit with that kind of central theme. Yeah, Claire, the whole thing would be ghosts and vampires. If you were making homebrew things, it would just be all the homebrew ghosts and vampires. All of the spoops. I'm going to go ahead and start grabbing names who've typed in the giveaways, and I'm going to pop them into a separate thing, and then later on we'll do some drawing and pick some winners. I feel like I should have stocked up on cough medicine or like throat medicine before starting this. I'd forgotten just how dry it can make your throat just talking. Let's go ahead and copy some of these. So keep on typing giveaway, and then periodically I'll come in and grab them. Honey tea. Yeah, exactly. Definitely should have gone for honey tea first. Matthias asks, if the magazine turns out successful, printed versions would be awesome. I get the logistics could be hard to pull off though. I really should have had this prepared. I'm gonna do a cardinal sin of streaming. I'm gonna leave the frame and grab a printed copy. Yeah. And with movie magic, we're back. So printed copies are coming. I just don't know when. So I have print samples that I got made by a printer that I've worked with for a long time. But for the majority of people, the way that you're going to get print copies of the magazine is going to be using DriveThruRPG's print-on-demand system. Unfortunately, I didn't realize just how, one, convoluted the back end of DriveThruRPG's print-on-demand is, and two, how long it takes. So all the files are set up and ready to go. but I have to wait until they send me a physical copy so that I can say, yes, okay, that the drive-through RPG physical copy is approved, then it can go on sale. So I have physical copies that I got printed elsewhere, but for everybody else, the physical copies will be through drive-through RPGs, print on demand. But it will be coming, it's just, it won't be now. It all depends on how quickly drive-through RPG get the copies through to me. But I'm really pleased with how it looks. The colors came out super vibrant. The text is like super readable, which is nice. And having it physically is just really, really cool. There's something awesome about making something and then holding it in your hands that you just don't get quite the same in a digital form. Rich asks how many issues planning for the first run. So 3 issues as a test, and then I'll evaluate, see how it's performing, see how many people have signed up for the Patreon, how many sales there've been on drive-through RPG, all those good things, and then see where we go from there. I imagine that it will keep going because the response so far has been really good. It's blown my expectations out of the water in terms of the response so far. So if it keeps on that kind of trajectory, words are hard, then I'll keep making them and start hiring new writers and get exciting new voices to come on board. In terms of kind of the scope of where we're going to go FAST, in terms of the scope of where we're going to go with it, I've got a whole bunch of plans for kinds of articles that we could do. Some of the things that have been suggested, I'm pretty sure that it was you, Claire, that suggested the agony and kind of people write letters of here's the problem I'm having in my game, and then I kind of give my thoughts on that. I really like that idea. That would be a really nice way to interact with the community throughout issues. So I thought that was a really good idea. I think that there's a whole bunch of stuff that we could do with kind of ongoing adventures. So issue 2, which small preview on the back of issue 1. Issue 2 is going to have a level 1 adventure in it. It's going to have the Tomb of the Jade Tyrant, which is the adventure that I put together for my players to start the campaign in Ashk. So it's going to have a bunch of information specific to Ashk and then some information on how to take that and put it into other campaign settings. And my goal with kind of all the adventure stuff that I put in this magazine is I want it to be super runnable. So my focus is all on, you are a dungeon master, you have not read this adventure before, you've picked up this magazine and you want to run that adventure tonight. How can I present the information in ways that is super useful? So lots of breakout boxes. So things like every section is going to have a section summary right at the start that tells you here are the major beats of the upcoming pages. And anytime there is a key piece of information that you need to remember, that'll get a box that's like, remember this. So say there's an NPC that needs to betray the party. The second or third time they interacted with them in the adventure, it might have a remember box that says, remember, this is what the NPC's been doing behind the screens. You need to subtly convey these things. Diego says, did the magazine did good this first time? I think I understand what you mean. So far, the response has been really good. I'm just going to mute myself so that I can cough. Like I said, definitely should have prepared some honey tea. Part of it comes from that kind of excited energy as well for the launch. Hey Jay. So we're gonna do adventures, and the adventure series is something that I'd like to do over time as well. So the Tomb of the Jade Tyrant is going to be the first installment. It will stand on its own, but it can also serve as the first adventure in a series, kind of an adventure module where the players are going in search of the lost city of gold, kind of like Fantasy Eldorado. A humidifier. I didn't realize humidifiers would have that effect, but if it works. Oh, my throat. I will pull up my list. I've got a list of kind of article ideas that I've been keeping, and let's see what other things we've got. So, article ideas. Sidequest. There we go. So I mentioned kind of community interaction ones, kind of agony aunt kind of things. Those would be really cool. I'd love to do some kind of one-page dungeons. Those are really good kind of page fillers. So if we're to meet kind of production minimums for printed products, so I always want a printed version available, we have to meet certain page counts, and kind of one-page dungeons are a great way to fill out the magazine if it's over or under. So kind of community sections, one-page dungeons. Monsters is another one that I really want to do. Is lots of monsters, lots of new, cool, weird monsters with really evocative art. Aaron says, I might have missed this, but did you say patrons get a physical copy, or is it just the digital only and we purchase through DriveThruRPG? At the moment, patrons are only going to get a digital copy. But that's mainly because the logistics of the printed copies and the print on demand, etc., I haven't fully worked out yet. Because as I say, the back end for DriveThruRPG is a mess. I would love to, in the future, offer physical copies to patrons. And there's a couple of ways that I might be able to do that. I'm still looking into it. Rich asks, how many pages are in the physical copy? There are 28 pages in the digital and physical copy. Maya says you could do a set of one-page dungeons that is over the months. A greater dungeon. Yeah, that's a great idea. Lots of little pieces. Maya and Claire both, we would love a good monster. We do love a good monster. One of my favorite things about doing monsters is you get that really awesome artwork with it. If I'm going to put a monster in the magazine, I want there to be artwork for it, and then you get the really gribbly, awesome looking art. Mark says, from my understanding, physical copy will be buy if you want, patrons get digital. Yeah, that's exactly right. At least initially, if I can find a way that makes sense in terms of cost to give patrons a physical copy, I would love to do that, because I think that would be a really cool reward. Bob says, idea, have some games for characters using stats for difficulty. Do you mean kind of like role-playing games? Like drinking games and things like that, or in-game contests kind of things? That would be really cool. I've got some homebrew rules for things like drinking contests and kind of competition feats, things like that, that I could include. Those would be really cool. Those will almost certainly make it in. I might move them in. I could move them into issue 2 or 3. Actually, there's some kind of homebrew contest rules. Gambling is a big one. My last session this last week, I really thought the players were just going to sit and gamble the whole time. They're kind of doing some traveling, and they started the session doing a little bit of gambling, and then it escalated and escalated and escalated. And I genuinely thought we weren't going to get anything done, and they were just going to sit there and gamble. I think the only reason that didn't happen is because they kind of, as players, recognized that if they didn't stop, then this would just be a bunch of people getting together to fake gamble in a fake world. Darts is actually a really good idea, Claire. I think I actually have some kind of really rough rules for how to represent a darts style game with dice. Matthias says, I'd love an article on organizing world building with examples like article structure and stuff. That's a really good idea. I can throw that directly on the idea list right now. Advice on the structure of world building. And there's going to be a whole bunch of articles from either past videos or future videos, or there's a bunch of kind of video topics that I have thought of and kind of started development on, but then realized don't work for video. There are some topics that just don't make compelling videos that kind of get scrapped as a video idea, but would work perfectly for a written article that would be perfect in Sidequest. So they will almost certainly kind of reappear. Rich says, if you're doing gambling, then some Goblin Wolf Rider racing would be fun. Racing would be a lot of fun. Challenge called stacking crates on top of each other, building as high as possible. Jengering. Wyvern pod racing. I think racing is a really popular one, and I think that something like a chariot race or similar would be really cool. But if you're going to do it, you need to give the players a way to cheat, like mechanically give them a way to cheat. So incorporate, your sleight of hands and your stealth rolls for them to be able to gain some kind of advantage in that. That would be really cool. An article just on a suite of tavern games and all that kind of stuff. Flip, we're talking about potential article topics for future issues of Sidequest, and at the moment we're talking about kind of tavern games, challenges, contests, all those kinds of things. Trev says, I did a Mario Kart style chariot race in my Theros game. I love Theros. Like, Theros was a really good book. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. I didn't expect to be so interested in a Magic the Gathering setting, but I think because it's got such a heavy kind of ancient Greece influence, then it really sparked my imagination, and there was a lot of really evocative stuff in there. So I really enjoyed Theros. Maya says, I'm going to introduce Dragon Racing to my players in the next festival. I can share the rules when I make them. Dragon Racing would be super cool. I feel like if we ended up with Dragon Racing, then like this cover would have been perfect for it. But it was too cool not to use. It's a dragon in a desert, and the whole Ashk's whole shtick is the desert, so I couldn't not use a dragon in a desert. Tavern games called Nim, based on the real world version. I'm not super familiar with that. I do have a whole bunch of both tavern games and dice games. I would probably need to rename some of them. Some of them have got colourful sailor names that would need to be renamed. But I've got a bunch that we use in our home game pretty frequently. There's one dice game that involves rolling 2 dice, and the players have lost so much money because of it. Theros is a goldmine for inspiration. I know that for me, a lot of the Pantheon stuff was really interesting. So the Reborn, they were really cool. I was really excited to see the kind of the returned ancestry option in that Unearthed Arcana recently, because I was disappointed that you couldn't play as a Reborn in the Theros book. Bullfighting with monsters is just a regular fight. It is. Though fighting monsters is a good kind of tavern game. In my last campaign, there was a tavern that the players used to go to fairly frequently that had a fighting pit in the ground. And they started off fighting each other and fighting other humanoids, but eventually escalated to fighting all kinds of monsters. They fought a gorilla. So one of the party members was a Gripply barbarian, the little frog people. He was a frogman barbarian, and he fought a gorilla in unarmed hand-to-hand combat and won. And he got the moniker the Gorilla Slayer after it and became a bit of a cult hero, which was really cool. Get the party wrapped up in a pro wrestling ring so they get exposed to the idea that it's all play to make money. In Final Fantasy IX, there was a really cool fighting pit side game. Fighting pits are a really good source of kind of side quest activity. The pro wrestling ring idea, Trev, I've actually been incorporating some kind of wrestling elements in my game recently. So our party has a barbarian at the moment, and one of the things that I find with martial characters, especially as you climb the levels, is their turns aren't particularly interesting. It's just, I hit this thing, does it die? And what I wanted to do was I wanted to give the player more options to do cool stuff without hampering their kind of mechanical abilities. So I didn't want them to go, oh, I'm not going to do this cool thing because it's not as efficient as just swinging my great axe. So what we've been doing is kind of swapping out actions. So if one thing he likes to do is he likes to RKO people, do the wrestling move, the RKO. And what I say is, right, okay, instead of rolling an attack action, make a grapple check, and if you succeed the grapple check, will count as a hit. You'll RKO your opponent, and then you deal your great axe damage. So mechanically, they're still getting the benefit that they would otherwise, so they're not making a suboptimum choice. But flavor-wise, it's much cooler that this Goliath barbarian charges up and just RKOs their opponent rather than slashing at them with a great axe. And since doing that, it's made that particular player much more invested in kind of the narrative of the fights. He gets way more into thinking about, right, what can I do? I'm going to do a running jump and try and choke slam this guy, or I'm going to climb up the side of a building and elbow drop this guy rather than attack him with my axe. And it just makes combat much more interesting. Flip says something from the old Roman gladiator fights where they had a one nimble and quick person that only had a net or a spear against a strong armed swordsman that would be slow and an interesting idea. Nets are really cool. I really like deploying nets against the players because they're not used to things that limit their mobility, and there's always a kind of moment of panic when they get netted. Article idea: magic items with achievements to level them up as the game progresses. I like that a lot, Rich. I like using progression-based magic items. So it's something I did a lot in my last campaign. I haven't done it as much in this campaign because we've switched over to 5th edition and I've tried to kind of limit magic items a little bit, make them feel much more rare. So the players haven't come into contact with a huge amount of them yet. But magic items that level with you and become more powerful when you do certain things with them are or is something that I really enjoy. So there's definitely a whole bunch of different items that I would love to include in an article in the future. That's a great idea. Let's have a look. Jay, I see your entry for the giveaway, and I will make a note of it. You'll go in the pile. Let me just paste that there. Idea: a notice board with one sentence plot hooks could be a cool repeating element, for example, beneath the table of contents in the magazine. So, Matthias, that actually is going to be in issue 1. So let me go ahead and open this up. there is a notice board of a couple of different just kind of vague quest ideas in issue 1, and it is something that can definitely make an appearance in future issues as well. Trev says, I built a grapple touch spell sorcerer rune fighter that's dream was to wrestle a dragon. Wrestling a dragon is a real good kind of motivation. Flip, the giveaway is for digital copies of Sidequest. So just type in !giveaway and you get entered, and then towards the end of the stream we will I'll throw all the names into a generator and we'll give away some copies. I love items that have personalities, such as a sword which is sentient. I think they add a really nice bond. Yeah, sentient weapons are really cool. And kind of giving sentience to anything is always really fun. So in our current campaign, the artificer has got a kind of battle pig that he's made, and this pig gets destroyed all the time, and he keeps like remaking it. And in one of our recent adventures, they found a soul coin. So the currency in hell, these kind of coins that have got a soul trapped inside them, and there was a devil's soul trapped in there. So the next time he built this battle pig, he built it with like a coin slot, like it was an arcade machine. And he put the soul coin into it, and now instead of just having this robot pig, he's got this robot pig who is almost like possessed by the spirit of a devil. And he rides around on him, and the devil pig talks and will make, witty remarks about what's going on. And that has been a lot of fun. In my last campaign, I used a bunch of sentient weapons and weapons with personalities. My favorite was probably a knife that had the spirit of a beholder trapped inside it, and it became more powerful the more you kind of fed it. So the more you use the knife to defeat your enemies, the more powerful the knife became. And it was, by the end of the campaign, it was kind of god tier weapon. It was one of the few things that could like full on kill a god. One of the big bad evil guys used it to kill a member of the Pantheon, and it was a whole thing. Which says, is it pronounced artificer or artificer? I don't know what. I imagine it's a North American British divide. I switch between artificer and artificer depending on whoever I'm speaking to. So if someone is saying artificer, I will kind of default to that, or I usually say artificer. I have no strong feelings either way, because I'm not 100% sure which it is. Bob says sentience can be good, especially if the item has different has ideas different to the character that's wielded it. Absolutely. If you can put those sentient things in kind of direct opposition to the characters, awesome. Really cool stuff. Go ahead. Idea. I'd like to see an enhanced rule set for players who collect animal familiars. Maybe some cool things they can use them for, and how they can train them rather than just animal handling checks. That is a really cool idea. I'm gonna just copy and paste that wholesale into my idea list. Kevin says, how do you keep sentient weapons from acting like a DMPC? You just don't give the players all the information. So the sentient weapon might not have all the information, or if it is sentient, it will have goals different to the players, and it won't necessarily give them all the information that it has for any one thing. A clean freak great axe and a wild barbarian that likes a blood dripping in blood. Sentient items with multiple identities would be crazy. Yes, like a multiple personality sentient item would be a thing. Like trying to cope with that would be intense. Flip said, like I had a player who was playing an evil character but had a lawful good sword. Since he was playing a fighter, he couldn't part with it. Yeah, I like putting the sentient creatures or introducing other characters and putting them in opposition to the players. So Claire says, Flip, so like if the fighter wanted to do something evil, the sword was like in refusal like their conscience. Yes, I like that. The idea of putting the alignments against each other. Kevin says, "Love no problem, no plan, no problem." Thank you, Kevin. Much appreciated. Let's have a look here and see. Have I missed any giveaway pings? Yes, I have. Go ahead and get them in there. I created a magic item that works differently to standard, could be deemed to be cursed, but it's not just how it works. Cursed items is another thing that I absolutely love. I think that for anyone that does listen to No Plan, No Problem, you'll probably be aware that I have kind of a fascination with betraying my players and just giving them untold worlds of hurt. And one of the ways I do that is with cursed items. And I love throwing kind of delayed trigger curses at the players. So they pick up an item, it doesn't immediately register as cursed, or whatever it is that's going to curse them, their negative effects don't apply immediately, so that they kind of get lulled into that false sense of security. They become reliant on that item. Then you hit them with the 1-2 punch of it's cursed, you get a negative impact, and oh, now you have to get rid of this item that you now rely on, and that's always a lot of fun. Same with if you're running a game with enemies that use poison, I would strongly consider not having the poison trigger in the fight. So have them attack them with poison, make your saves behind the screen, and then have the poison kick in after the fight is done, because it will create a new sense of panic in the players, because they're like, what caused this? Everything that I could ask about it is dead. And that kind of panic that sets in is always a lot of fun. One such item is a ring of bloody protection. It gives bleed damage but raises the AC and saves as well. That's really cool. Kevin says, do you let the PC find out about the delayed curse with identify? So it varies on a case-by-case basis. My players tend not to identify things. Like, they're really bad for just picking things up and using them, or even with traps and doors. We had a session several weeks ago where they went through, it must have been half a dozen trapped doors, and they didn't check any of them. Like, the first one triggered and the trap went off, and you'd think that that would make them paranoid to check the next one, but it didn't. They just opened it and that had a trap. The whole floor of this dungeon was just trap after trap, and they just steamrolled through it, almost dying multiple times because they just wouldn't check for traps. Claire says, I don't know how everyone you play with isn't just an anxious wreck at this point, especially after Doppelganger. Yeah, I'm not sure how they're not all anxious wrecks either. I'm very much discovered over time that kind of paranoia and kind of betrayal is very much one of my signature things. I love to play with the players' expectations and betray them in ways that they don't necessarily think about. And my favorite thing is to kind of subtly manipulate their path so they end up betraying either themselves or each other. That's the real juice, is when you get them turning on each other. Sentient item, but it hides that it's cursed because it doesn't want to be left alone. It can't get over. I still can't get over sentient items. Kind of masking sentience or masking the intent of items or characters is really fun. I don't know whether a version of it exists in 5th edition, but in Pathfinder there was a ring that would allow you to kind of mask either your alignment, your law chaos axis, or good and evil. And I had an NPC, an evil NPC, that wore one of those rings, so he just had no alignment if anyone would cast detect on him. And then he had like an amulet of magical suppression, so he would be loaded with magical items that would be suppressed to detection, because he was a high level kind of time traveling sorcerer that was masquerading as a simple shopkeep. I'm now going to make a wrestling storyline where the champion owner won't let go of the title belt because it's a cursed item. So if a PC beats him for it, it now becomes cursed. Yes, that is really cool. Making something that they actively want and they have to work towards cursed is a really good idea. Claire says, I'm here for it like a book that whispers and says, say a magic caster could use it to study, but it's whispering to them and slowly sort of correcting them over time. I love that. I love kind of slow burn corruption is always a good thing, especially if you can do it so that the players think it's their idea. So if you can kind of move the players around like pawns to the point where they go, I've had a really good idea, I'm going to do this thing that will ultimately ruin the party. That's the top tier betrayals there. The angel armor skin in Pathfinder. Yeah, that's another option as well. I do really like looking to other editions specifically for magic items, and things of that nature. The 4th edition books are really, really good sources of inspiration. 4th edition gets a really bad rap, which I really don't think it deserves. I understand why at the time it kind of got the pushback it did, but I think that there are so many things that I think 4th edition does better than 5th edition. I think the way it presents information in that kind of instruction manual style is excellent. I think the Dungeon Master guides, the 2 Dungeon Master guides for 4th edition are worlds better than the 5th edition one in terms of instructing a new player on how to be a Dungeon Master, kind of the non-mechanical, non-specific things that go into being a Dungeon Master. 4th edition does that worlds better. And then a lot of the kind of powers and magic items and armor and things like that 4th edition has a great source of inspiration for 5th edition stuff. Flip says, my favourite moment so far with the cursed item is when a player was in a small room, he went, ooh, a nice necklace, puts it around his neck, 3 seconds pass, everyone sighs and he blows up. Oh, was it a necklace of delayed fireballs? I love the necklace of fireballs. Such a good magic item. It was the first magic item I ever got as a player, and just throwing the necklace of fireballs at someone is just so good. And a necklace of delayed fireballs is an excellent idea. Did a campaign helping an NPC for the entirety, only to find out that in completing the prophecy it was actually killing all the gods as we knew and bringing them back to the old gods. I like that. I like any storyline where the players think the players do things that further the bad guys' goals. Joe says, I'm planning an adventure for new players, but I'm really worried about how I can get them to be engaged. So engagement is a funny thing. For the most part, if the players have agreed to play, they have agreed to be engaged. So when a player says, yes, I will come and I will play D&D with you, you can run D&D with us, I will come and play D&D with my friends. As part of that kind of social contract, they are agreeing to be engaged, and you can leverage that and take that quite far in that sort of the meta knowledge that they know if we don't go along with certain elements, not necessarily railroading them, but if we don't engage with this, then it doesn't happen. And like Claire says, chat to them beforehand, before you start, and see what they're wanting from a game, so you can make sure they know how each player is here for the most. Absolutely. Like, a session 0 is going to solve so many headaches, especially with a new group, because you can get a really good idea of what makes them tick and what parts of the game they are most excited by. So it's very rare that you'll get a group of people who are all equally invested in each pillar of the game as each other. A lot of the time, you might have several people that are really only interested in combat. They just want to roll some dice, hit things, fight cool monsters, have those cinematic combat moments, And then you get other players who are really into the role play, and you'll find that the combat orientated players aren't going to engage as much in the role play, and the role play orientated players aren't going to engage as much in the combat. But that is okay. Like, people will like different things, and not everyone's going to be kind of switched on and 100% all the time, and that's completely okay. The more you make your peace with that, the less stress it's going to cause you as the DM. Your favorite or the best Wizards of the Coast, non-Wizards of the Coast books to use for inspiration. An inspiration list is a cool article idea. I will add that to the list, Phoenix. Let's have a look. Flip says, so I have 4 players. 2 of them are more engaged than the others. 2 aren't as much. Create their engagement through the interaction with each other. They're always coming up with things to do. That's another great thing, is players interacting with each other will take you a lot of the way. Claire says, for example, I'm not a fan of combat. I'm really only here for the interesting story. I love talking to NPCs and generally wandering around. That is very much true. Unless the wandering around leads into, like, rooms and I go ahead and lock the door behind us and we have to fight a spider. Then there's bad times. Bob says, I love adapting meta knowledge, so as most players know of hydras, I change the fire to ice or electric damage instead. Yeah, I am a big fan of tweaking monsters just enough to play with that meta knowledge. It's a really powerful way, especially for players that have played for a long time or are more experienced. It's a really good way to kind of get them out of their own head and get them thinking, right, okay, I'm familiar with what the books say, but this world is not like what the core books say. Flip says, I gave the players a survey so that I knew what everyone wanted from me. A survey's a great idea as well. Ongoing, it's really good to do these kind of things. A multi-elemental Hydra would be really cool, like an element for each different head. That's really cool. Claire says, I'm never going to be over that spider. No. It's Steph of Nightmares. Matthias says, have you dropped a false Hydra on your players before? I've never used a false Hydra, but I really like them conceptually. They're really fun creatures. So for those that, let's go ahead and fire over to D&D Beyond, and we'll take a look at the false Hydra and have a look at how we could use it. Hydra. How you spell Hydra? That is how you spell Hydra. Why is false Hydra not a thing? Let's go into monsters and search Hydra. Hydra. Yes, please. Does the false Hydra not exist in 5th edition? Am I forgetting? False Hydra. Let's Google will tell me. I really thought that false Hydra was in 5th. Am I losing my marbles? There we go. False Hydra is not an official creature, but a homebrew one. That must be why. I knew I knew about it, but I've never run one, so my brain wasn't kicking in. Claire says, be prepared. No, Phoenix says, I'm a middle ground player. I love a bit of combat, love a bit of roleplay. Really want to get into the political intrigue type campaign. If there's plenty of combat involved, perfect. What I have started doing as the DM is I kind of cycle through. So I'll have a couple weeks where we might have more combat heavy sessions. And then once that's over, then I will try and plan something specifically more roleplay focused so that we kind of move between. I don't get stuck on any one thing for too long. And then Claire says, be prepared for the players not to stick to the book. We played a short campaign once that ended up turning into a detective mystery, which was completely not was on paper. Yeah, not at all. One of us faked our death and basically harassed an NPC, but he wasn't shady at all. That's one of the things that you can never really account for as a DM, is the players latching onto an idea that is absolutely wrong and going full on with it, just fully committing to this idea and just not giving it up. I'm a player. Have a look. As a player, I love throwing entire toolboxes into the DM's plans. I've done it a few times in a single campaign. Yeah, throwing. It can be really interesting to throw a spanner into the works and kind of see how you all collectively kind of problem solve that. That can always be a lot of fun. Let's see here. Have another beverage. Don't forget, if you want to get in with a chance of winning a digital copy of issue 1 of Sidequest, type !giveaway into the chat so I can find it and then choose winners. What time we're on? We are 20 minutes away from launch. That is exciting. Phoenix is like, why not? I'm gonna get it anyway, but why not? So let's have a look here. We are 20 minutes away. Has anyone got any questions that immediately spring to mind about Sidequest that you want to ask or want to know about? Or if you've got ideas for future article kind of things, go ahead and throw them in as well. We've had some really good suggestions so far. Grand Admiral Thrawn. Always a pleasure. Add your name to the list. We let's see, we are just under 20 minutes away from pressing the big red button. I did try and find a like a big red button that I could actually press, but I didn't have enough time, which made me a little bit sad. I thought it would have been a lot of fun to physically press a giant red button. Maya says, an article on various mounts and markets. Guard Drake mount variants. Let's have a look. Mounts can definitely go on the list. When you say markets, are you thinking kind of like lists of things a vendor would have? So kind of presenting the NPC that runs the market and then giving an idea of the kind of things that they sell, or what are you thinking in terms of markets? Cass says, I have loads of ideas, but they've all been vetoed. Some of them have been vetoed, not all of them. And then Claire says, when you start collaborating with other creators, I think like a half-page spotlight on different creators would be really cool. That is a cool idea. Once I start bringing on other people to contribute, I definitely want to make sure the proper kind of credit and acknowledgement is being given, whether that is like a spotlight or kind of a meet the team for each episode, for each issue could be cool. So kind of a letter from the editor and a meet the team. Here are the people who have worked on this issue. That would be really cool. Not really a side quest question. When you create a campaign, how much do you create of it in the long term compared to how much like a week before the session? So Flip, the way I did it with Ashk was I created a huge amount of it before I ever started playing, partly because it was being made for the video series, for the Making a Homebrew campaign series, but partly because world building is just something I really like to do, and I usually have 2 settings on the go at any time. So while we were playing our last campaign, which was set in Valoroth, I was planning out Ashk. And now that we're in Ashk, when I've got that world building itch, but I don't feel it for Ashk, I go ahead and I make information for elsewhere in the world. So I'm always world building something to some degree, because that's one of the great joys that I get. Maya says lists for various NPCs and also a market that you can plop into the game. I understand now. That's a great idea. Jay says fantasy plants, anyone? Fantasy plants is actually on my list of things. So one of the things that you're going to get in issue 1 is you're going to get concoctions for the ranger, which is kind of special potions, and they're all story based. So to give you an example, let's grab the magazine here, and we'll choose my favorite. My favorite is called Tears of Mount Celestia, and it is made from the leaves of a royal fern, a pinch of cinnamon, and the tears of a celestial willingly given. And then you combine all those together, make them into like a potion, a concoction, and then when you apply that to a weapon, when you make an attack against the fiend with that weapon, you get advantage on the attack. Or you can apply this oil to yourself and it will grant disadvantage to a fiend that is attacking you for up to an hour. But each of those concoctions, all of them have kind of a list of ingredients. So it might be plants, and wherever possible, I've gone through and kind of looked at the properties of plants. So if I want something that is supposed to increase your constitution, I've gone and tried to find some plants that have that kind of traditional medicine base in endurance and hardiness and all that kind of stuff, to include them. And that's something that I would like to do a lot more of, is make a robust alchemy system, essentially, which is what it would be. It would be a list of fantasy plants, a selection of bits of monsters, and then an alchemy system to make cool and interesting potions and concoctions. It is something that I have in progress. It will probably be a long-term kind of thing because it's fairly involved. List of names, Fae for locations. Lists is really good all-round content. The generator that I've been making for kind of locations, that's probably going to get incorporated in some way. So I'll probably talk about its creation. I might have an article about it and then a link to the whole thing. There's a lot of creators of 3D printable monsters that release 5e stats from collabs. Here could be an idea which could be beneficial for both, like an archvillain or a mini monster mayhem. That would be really cool. Custom printed monsters would be cool, and collaborating with other folks is always really good. A botany alchemy column, yeah. So the kind of alchemy idea I have is it might end up kind of fueling an entire issue, because there will be kind of related to harvesting monsters will come into it. So what is the process for harvesting monsters? That needs its own thing. And then you have the kind of list of plants and monster parts and the whole mechanical process of making these alchemical components. And then alchemist as a standalone class is something that a lot of people want, so it would make sense in that issue to be like, here is an alchemist class as part of their mechanics specific to this class. They get access to the concoction system, the crafting system, the monster harvesting, and all of that stuff. So I imagine that would be probably enough to kind of fuel almost an entire issue. Bob says the harvesting sounds a bit similar to Monster Hunter theme. I have never played Monster Hunter, the game, Monster World Hunter. I've never played the games, but yes, it is that kind of thing. You're tracking down monsters, very Witcher-esque. You're tracking down the monsters, and then you are harvesting specific elements of them. So several of the concoctions in the Ranger of the Wild require you to, let's say, get the heart of a creature with a constitution score of at least 16. Or they require you to get parts of a monster who meet certain criteria. Because I didn't want to go too specific with every concoction. Some of them are very, very specific. So some are like, you need fiend blood, or you need giant's blood, or you need something from a specific creature. But for a lot of them, I wanted, you need a part of a creature that meets this certain criteria, and it's usually stats based. So you might need a part of a creature that has a movement speed of at least 50 feet, and that might go into a potion that makes you faster, and kind of creating all those connections. And an expanded version of that system to accompany kind of monster harvesting rules and an alchemist would be super cool. And then maybe a Witcher style faction as well. Maybe some feats, all that kind of stuff. Class says I'm going to go with Final Fantasy again. In 10, you could do monster catching. Basically, you had to kill so many of each monster for rewards. Yeah, that kind of thing. So collecting, kind of go out and collecting a number of monsters, that is definitely something that could be incorporated into it. I'm not sure how well it directly ties into kind of a pen and paper RPG for you need to get 5 of this, because that is a very video game thing. But the going to get specific parts of them, absolutely. We need chocobos. Monster breeding. A campaign where you work for a mage asking you to collect creatures for him. That would be really cool. That kind of system can sustain a lot of play. It's something that I've been incorporating into my current campaign because one of the players is kind of a herbalist. So she has expressed interest in kind of harvesting bits of monsters and using them in interesting ways. So that's something I have been actively working to kind of expand on, both my own game, and I think tying it into a alchemist class would be really appreciated by a lot of people. Matthias says, if I sign up now on Patreon, will I get the PDF in 10 minutes, or should I just wait until tomorrow to not get double charged? Patreon charges a new month in 8 hours. Oh yeah, that's a very good point. I always forget about patrons double charging, because they have said they're gonna change that, but I don't know when. If you're worried about double charging, wait for it to tick over in 8 hours. The PDF is going to be available to patrons at the $5 tier throughout May, and then on June 1st, issue 1 is going to only be available to higher tier patrons. So the $5 tier is going to get you access to that month's version of Sidequest for as long as you are a patron at $5. And then the higher tiers is going to give you access to the back catalogue of Sidequest, as well as my back catalogue of all the other various things I've made on Patreon, of which there is a lot. There's one-page adventures and maps and game aids and all that kind of stuff. So if you are concerned about the double charging, which is something that I hadn't thought about, wait until it's kind of ticked over. We are 8 minutes away from hitting the big red button. So I'm gonna just tab and make sure that I've got everything set up. Patreon is gonna sort that out for itself. And then we just need to press the big red button on Drive-Thru RPG to get that to launch, which is super exciting. I have been shouting about Sidequest from the rooftops for like 3-4 weeks now, every chance I get, and I'm so excited for people to get their hands on it and to experience it. Oh, thank you, Kevin. I'm glad that you appreciate it. I hope that people really enjoy Sidequest. It's not gonna cure baldness or, do anything magical, but hopefully every single issue is gonna inspire you, because that's what I want. I came up on hobby magazines. I got started in tabletop gaming in general with the Games Workshop, Dion Gastini, Battle Games in Middle-earth magazines. I've got like 100 issues over in my bookshelf, and the getting those magazines and reading them every other week or every month with White Dwarf and getting inspired, even if I wasn't playing those games at the time, but gleaning inspiration from them was such a formative part of not only just my childhood, but also kind of my life as a tabletop gamer. So that is what I want Sidequest to be. Even if you don't use the articles in that specific issue, I want them to kind of spark your inspiration. Let's have a look. I hope physical copies go well, especially in the pandemic where we're all bored, but the shipping of things are messed up. Yeah, the physical copies is still very much in the air because, like I say, the back end for Drive Through RPG's physical copy printing is a mess. So figuring all that out and getting it sorted has been a bit of a difficult challenge, but I'm really excited to see how physical copies go. Down the road, I would love to be able to fulfill them myself, but that definitely requires a much bigger community to be able to meet minimum printing orders and all that kind of stuff. Flip says, I also love Deck of Many Things. Anything that can have really good advantages and really bad negatives. Yeah, Deck of Many Things is super cool. Mark says, I'll be buying a physical copy if it'll cure my baldness. Anyway, 100% it won't. I might even have to get some stickers to put on the front to be like, yeah, it can't. Claire says, proud of you, Mr. Icarus. You've done a baller job. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. 5 minutes. My experience with Drive Through RPG has been quite good. I live in Norway, so expected to wait a few weeks, but got it way faster than expected. That's really good. On the back end, I ordered the print proof 3 or 4 days ago now, and it says it will take up to 2 to 3 weeks. I'm hoping it comes sooner than that, because I can't turn the printed version on until I've had the proof, and then tell them I've had the proof and all of that palaver. But the digital version should be good to go in 4 minutes. So what I'm going to do is while we're waiting for those 4 minutes, I'm going to go through the list and we're going to pull some winners. So we want 1 to 17. So generate me a number generator. Let's tab back in so I can see what's being talked about. Oh, here we go. Lady Gaga. It's happened. So we want up to 17. So if anyone hasn't yet entered the giveaway, type !giveaway in the chat now, and I will grab the list of people and we'll throw it into a randomizer and we'll pick some winners to get some PDF copies of Sidequest. Exactly like that, Paul. Perfect. So I'm going to go and put that in there. And we'll give it another 60 seconds for anyone else that has yet to enter into the giveaway. And then we'll do a quick draw before we press the big red button. Let's go ahead and type that in there. Claire doesn't need any prompting to talk about Lady Gaga. Maya, there will be a print run in some capacity, whether it's print on demand or otherwise. It's just figuring out the logistics of it, but it will be coming one way or another. Diogo, no, you hadn't, so I will go ahead and throw you on there, and then I will fire up the random number generator, and we will generate a winner. Okay. Here we go. Oh, right in there at the last second, Obsidian. The winner is me. Right. Okay. So let's throw. Turn that on. Right. Random number generator. We need up to 20. So we're going to go with 17, and 17 is Paul. Congratulations, Paul. So how are we going to do this? Paul, if you fire off an email to info@icarusminiatures.com, Phoenix, if you could type that in the chat, because I'm not signed into the chat, so I can't actually type that. If you fire off an email, I will send your copy over to you as soon as I get done pressing the big red button on all of the places that need to be pressed. Which I think it is about that time. We are 1 minute away, so I'm going to switch over here and jump over to DriveThruRPG, and we're going to go and hover over the make public button. Those of you that are already patrons, your email is going out right now. So I've hit the button. We are launched. Sidequest is out in the world. Let me go ahead and grab a link, and that exists now. I will drop the link to the version that is on DriveThruRPG for those that want to pick it up on DriveThruRPG rather than on Patreon. If monthly subscriptions aren't your bag, I will drop the link to that there. I had to tab in and change where I was posting, but that should come up. Yeah, so that will take you to the DriveThruRPG. I will type the email address. So Paul, if you rusminiatures.com, if you pop me over an email to that email address, and just take a screenshot of your YouTube page so that I can see your username and your icon at top right to verify, I will go ahead and send that over to you. But yeah, it's live. It's out in the world. People can go and read it now. Those of you over on Patreon, let me go ahead and check my emails to see if the email has gone out. The email has gone out, so patrons, you'll get access to it from now, and it is available on DriveThruRPG. And then let's paint the town red. Yes. I am going to call the stream there and end on the high note, because my voice is about 5 seconds away from being gone. I imagine I'm going to wake up tomorrow with a very sore throat. But thank you very much to everyone for hanging out. It's been a lot of fun. I hope that you enjoy Sidequest. I hope that it inspires you and that you are excited to see it grow, because I certainly am. And if you haven't already, before I go, I will drop the link to my Discord server. /Discord. I believe that's the link to it. Come and join us over on Discord. There's a whole bunch of really awesome people there. And yeah, thank you again for joining and checking out Sidequest. And I shall see you all